What's up, everybody? A very happy Wednesday night to you. I am back in New York, back from my trip to Seattle. The Mariners are 3-4. We got a lot to get to on this show. Appreciate everybody for being with us as always. If you're watching on YouTube, if you were watching on X, again, I do appreciate your time. We're going to be joined by former Mariners relievers Penn Murfee and Matt Festa in this show. I'm looking forward to that. I'll tell you a little bit more about my trip to Seattle. I'll tell you a little bit more about my travel issues. The Mariners are 3-4, and we are off and running in the 2026 season. Again, you can get in if you're watching on YouTube. You can hit the comment button. You can also get in if you're watching live on X as well. If you have any issues with the video stream, please do let me know. It's something I've been trying to work on, although I have to admit I don't have my great camera plugged in today because I needed something else plugged into its spot. Too many plugs, not enough USB outlets. And yes, I have a USB extension cord basically with a million more outlets, and I have too many things plugged into that as well. So do let me know if you're listening on the audio version after the fact. I appreciate you as well. Reminder, you can follow our Mariners Roundtable Sports community. Myself and Taryn Kovacs do what we hope is a great job bringing you all the Mariners coverage that you need. I was with Taryn for the last week in Seattle, hustling, getting stories, getting content, getting audio, getting ideas, all of it great, and really enjoy working with Taryn and appreciate everybody who is helping us grow MarinersRoundtable.com. It is something, again, that we are doing, something that we are proud of, and I certainly appreciate everybody, again, who reads all of our stuff and who listens here to our podcast as well. Once again, you can get in on the message line on YouTube and on X. So without further ado, let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
Again, Matt Festa, Penn Murfee, they're going to stop by. We'll talk more about Colt Emerson, of course, as well, and we'll take your comments. First things first, I knew that we were going to fight this battle this season. I didn't necessarily think we'd fight it this early, but I knew we were going to fight this battle. I really think there's going to be Mariners fans in two camps at this point. Look, we saw the Mariners last year start slow. They went 3-7 out of the chute last year, if I recall. 3-4 at home, and then they got swept by the Giants. We saw Ryan Bliss get hurt. We saw Victor Robles get hurt in that time period. In the first 10 games, it looked like the sky was absolutely falling. And the Mariners rallied to win 90 games, win the division, get to ALCS Game 7, and establish themselves as a World Series contender. So I knew that at some point we were going to end up in one of these two camps where fans were going to either slough off potential early season struggles and say, look, I saw them struggle last year, nothing to worry about, they're good. Or it was going to go the other way where fans were going to give too much leash and it was going to end. Fans were either going to say, no big deal, I've seen them overcome before, or fans were going to say, no big deal, I've seen them overcome before, and they're going to wait too long to get riled up, right? So are you giving them too much grace or not enough grace? This is what we were going to come down to. I don't like the way I said that. Now, we're doing it live. I can't start over, but I don't like the way I want to articulate that better. Because the Mariners overcame in 2025, I do think that fans were either going to unnecessarily rush to judgment because, hey, like, yeah, you're upset after 10 games or 7 games, but we've seen them do this before. Relax. Or fans were going to relax too much and kind of let last year or influence this year too much. I think that's a better way of saying it. I am at the point here, 3-4, 7 games in. I am not upset. I am not worried. What I am is annoyed. I'm annoyed at a handful of things. I wanted, and I think all of you did, I wanted so badly for the Mariners to come out like gangbusters. I wanted them to come out and send a message. I wanted them to send a message that they were here to play, that last year they were for real, that they're motivated by the struggles at the end of last season. They're motivated by the failure at the end of last season. I wanted them to come out and send a message, and I'm talking 5-2 or 6-1. And that didn't happen. They played 2 playoff teams from a year ago, 2 teams that are probably going to be playoff teams this year, or at least certainly can be playoff teams this year. And they looked very, very average. And they looked very, very average at home. I don't think that these two series really tell us anything about what these three teams might look like in October. I don't think it matters at all from that regard. The Mariners look different now than they'll look then. So does Cleveland, and so do the Yankees. So I don't think that these matchups head-to-head tell us really anything. But I'm frustrated that the Mariners had a chance to play at home and win at home and send a message against good teams and didn't do it. I'm frustrated because I've told you there's two things you have to do in baseball. Win at home and beat who you're supposed to beat. Now, Cleveland and the Yankees aren't necessarily who they're supposed to beat, but they are at home. You have to be able to win at home. When you don't win at home, you force yourself into doing extraordinary things on the road, and we know that that's harder to do. I'm frustrated by the fact that these two teams can both get to the playoffs. These two teams can both win their division. These two teams, by extension, can battle with the Mariners for playoff seeding. And now the Mariners are in a position to have to win a series in Cleveland to get a tiebreaker and have to win a series in New York to get a tiebreaker. And those are difficult things to do. And yes, it's too early. It's April 1st. It is too early to talk about tiebreakers when it comes to this Major League Baseball season. But you know what? We saw what one game can do each of the last 3 years. The Mariners were left out of the playoffs by one game in 2023 and out of the playoffs by one game in 2024. And they saw what not having Game 7 at home in the ALCS does to you. One game can absolutely mean everything. And to not, already be in position to have a tiebreaker with Cleveland, it could be a big deal. To already have your backs against the wall against New York, that could be a very big deal. We are beyond the point, right? For a long time, I have been the just get to the playoffs guy, because that's what the Mariners warranted. Like, I'll be happy if they just get there. We have graduated from that way of thinking. We now expect that the Mariners are a contender. We expect them to make the playoffs. I want them to win the division again. And not only do I want them to win the division again, I want them to be in contention for the number 1 seed. And when you forfeit the opportunity to end up with a tiebreaker that matters and that could help decide home field advantage in the ALDS or the ALCS, I am irritated by that. So when we talk about how do I feel after these 7 games, again, I'm not worried. I know that 2, 3, and 4 are not going to hit 086 for the rest of the season. I believe that Edward Bizzardo and Gabe Spire and Andres Mood, I believe that the back end of the bullpen will be good. I believe in a lot of this stuff, and I believe in this team. But what I'm irritated by is that they've already found themselves kind of back against the wall in these tiebreaker scenarios. They weren't able to send a message, and they weren't able to win at home, which is what I believe is a foundational part of being a good team. And I'm frustrated at the rate of which I think the Mariners beat themselves over the course of these 7 games. I am not a fan of bad baseball or of bad baseball plays that lead to bad baseball outcomes, right? And you can kind of pick your poison here and look at where the Mariners beat themselves over the course of the last 7 days. Not every one of these decisions cost them the game, or every one of these plays cost them the game. But there are little things that you see that the Mariners failed to do that piled up over the course of this homestand, right? We did all the talk about Dan Wilson on Monday's show. So, yes, bullpen decisions are finicky. Bullpen decisions go both ways. Some of Dan Wilson's bullpen decisions worked. Some of them didn't. So that's in one box. So the bullpen decisions by nature are questionable, so they're always going to be a thing. Boom. The Mariners didn't handle the challenge situations very well. When they challenged, not always the right time. When they didn't challenge, certainly played a role in what happened over the last 7 games. They're going to have to get better at that. We saw a couple of missed tags at second base or dropped balls on stolen bases at second base by Leo Rivas. That matters. We saw multiple errors by Brendan Donovan at third base. That matters. We saw a handful of air-mailed balls into center field by Cal Raleigh. That matters. We saw Randy Arozarena fail to take a good angle on a ball in the gap in the outfield, and it turned into a double. That matters. We saw Brian Wu walk the leadoff guy and go from a 5-inning shutout to giving up 2 runs over 6, and the Mariners end up losing the game. That matters. We saw Gabe Spire not be able to get lefties out against Cleveland. That matters. We saw George Kirby have a 2-out walk against the Yankees on Wednesday, comes around to score. We saw George Kirby in the 6th inning of a 1-0 game walk the leadoff guy and have a 2-out walk, and both of those runs come around to score on Paul Goldschmidt's home run. I'm not going to be mad that Paul Goldschmidt homered. Paul Goldschmidt is a Hall of Famer. I know he's not the same player. I know he's not a guy who even hits home runs off righties that much anymore. I'm going to be less mad about a Hall of Famer, catching lightning in a bottle, hitting a homer, than I am George Kirby walking the leadoff guy and walking a guy with 2 outs. When you are giving teams scoring opportunities, gifting them scoring opportunities, or gifting them more scoring opportunities, that is what rubs me the wrong way. And that's to say nothing of the offense. The inability to hit a sac fly multiple times. Ryan Bliss failed to get a bunt down. I believe Victor Robles failed to get a bunt down. Some of you don't like bunting, but if you're going to do it, you better be able to get it down, and the Mariners weren't. So there were multiple things over the last 7 games that stacked up in which I feel like the Mariners beat themselves. The Yankees are good. The Yankees pitching staff has been great this year. They didn't just do this to the Mariners. They did this to the Giants. I don't want to take away from them. Cleveland notoriously has good pitching. I don't want to take away from them either. The teams they played are good, and they'll be in contention at the end of the year for a reason. But the things that have me annoyed are the Mariners not doing the little things and not doing them in fairly big spots and not doing them fairly consistently over the course of these first 7 games. That is a problem. The offense in general, I'm not worried about. Yes, 2-3-4 went 7 for 81. Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez, I believe, are running a 49% strikeout rate. None of that is good. I trust that they will be better moving forward, but we have to see the Mariners get better at these little things as well, because the little things become big things, and the big things then can become the difference between Game 7 at home and Game 7 on the road. I still believe in this roster. I still believe in this staff. I still believe in the rotation, I believe in all of it. That's why I'm not angry, but I'm annoyed that here we are 7 games in and we're talking about a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas and a lot of little things, a lot of meat that was left on the bone here. That, to me, is the most disappointing part of all of this. Now, there are absolutely positives to take from the first 7 games. Luke Raley, great spring into an excellent March and now April 1st. 3 home runs in the first series, 6 RBIs in the first series. That was tied for the league lead after 1 series. Cole Young's been excellent. 10-pitch at-bat against an elite closer in David Bednar at the end of the game on Wednesday, nearly ties it with a home run. Maybe in July it is a home run. Randy Arozarena has looked pretty solid offensively. Jose Ferrer had a scoreless inning with a couple of strikeouts, and I believe he got Aaron Judge on Wednesday. Brendan Donovan's been excellent offensively. He's been excellent. He's been as advertised at the top of the order. So there are good things happening under the hood. There just weren't enough of them over the course of these 7 games. And now it's on the road to Anaheim and Arlington to face the Angels and the Rangers, 2 teams that you should be able to beat. So hopefully we will see the bats warm up as the weather warms up, and we will see the pitching and defense not beat itself in the way that I feel that it did over the course of the last 7 games. You cannot give teams other opportunities, right? The name of the game is minimize the opportunities for the other team and maximize them for yourself. Do not give other teams scoring chances, and do not give away your own scoring chances. Do not swing at pitches in the dirt. Do not swing at pitches over your head. We saw the Mariners do that. Do not walk the leadoff guy. We saw the Mariners do that. Do not walk guys with 2 outs and nobody on. We saw the Mariners do that. All of that was frustrating. Again, not worried, more annoyed. And we are going to have this conversation about kind of when is appropriate to push the worried meter or when is appropriate to push the panic button. That's going to come for each of us individually. I don't tend to get worried until 3 weeks into the season. 15 to 20 games is where I might start to get a little more worried or a little more agitated by things. But I want to see the team play better and clean up things as it moves on to Anaheim and as it moves on to Arlington. All right. A couple of things on my trip overall before we get to Penn Murfee. Former Mariners reliever Penn Murfee is going to join us next, and we'll talk about Colt Emerson. The trip was great. The trip to Seattle was great. I got there last Wednesday, right before opening day. I stayed through Monday's game, left early on Tuesday morning, so I was there for whatever that is, 5 full days, but 6 days in total spent on travel. Every time I go to Seattle, it's special. And I want to say this. I did daily radio for a decade. A lot of you know this. Some of you don't, but a lot of you do. I did daily radio for a decade. I loved that job. And one of my favorite things to do was to go out on location and to meet listeners and meet people and engage with, bar owners or restaurant owners or whoever. That was one of my favorite things to do, was just kind of be out amongst people. So I love going to Seattle and kind of meeting listeners and meeting people as well. But I told myself this time, it is a very full day when you cover a team. And it's not just me, it's anyone who covers any team. It is a very full day. You get to the ballpark at 1:00, you're there until 11. So that's a 10-hour day. By the time you maybe travel to the ballpark and travel home, it's an even longer day. And it is the most fun job in the world for me. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. As much as I love daily radio, this is the most fun I've ever had working. And I believe that when I go out, I want to justify the trip. So I try to work as hard as I possibly can. And I've been to Seattle now 3 times, and I've covered the Mariners in multiple other places. And it's always the same story. I always work my tail off to try to justify the trip and try to do as much as I can for the podcast and for MarinersRoundtable.com. I told myself this time that not only was I going to try to work my tail off, I was also going to try to take in some other non-work things. It wasn't necessarily, having, parties until 2 a.m., but I told myself I was going to try to enjoy the non-work part of the work trip. And I think I did that. On Wednesday, I got an opportunity to hang out with Joe Doyle. Joe Doyle over at the Overslot podcast. Joe and I have been going on the Mitch Unfiltered podcast every Sunday together for a year and a half. And Joe's come on my podcast 4 times. I believe he is the most frequent guest on Refuse to Lose. Joe and I had never met in person. So I made sure to go see Joe Doyle when I had the opportunity. And we spent maybe an hour and a half together, and some of his friends as well. And it was great to meet Joe, talk with Joe in person, engage with some other Mariners fans that he was buddies with. That was great. Then on Thursday night after the game, after opening night, I went out to the hall on Occidental, and I hung out. Occidental Avenue is right by the stadium. I went and hung out and watched a live episode of the Marine Lair podcast with Lyle and TJ. And Lyle and TJ have been on our show, and they're 2 of the most popular, if not the most popular people in the Mariners space. Do we do the same thing and that we talk about the same stuff? Yeah, we do it differently. They are very social media heavy. I do a lot of writing that they don't do. So we kind of all get to the same place, but we do it in different ways. And I really respect what Lyle and TJ do. So I went out and watched them do a show live after opening day, met some of their listeners, coincidentally, who happened to be some of my listeners also, which I didn't know at the time when I got there. So that was a lot of fun. And I got a chance to see them in their element and see how their listeners kind of interact with them. And then again, met a few of mine. On opening day, I had a chance to meet 2 listeners of the show at T-Mobile Park, Emily and Jamie, who I appreciated the chance to meet and talk with. On Saturday, I met a listener named Alan, who not only met me, but gave me an incredibly meaningful gift. And that meant a lot to me. And that was a lot of fun. I grew up in Federal Way, which was, maybe an hour or so from the ballpark, an hour light rail ride at least or so. I grew up in Federal Way, and I moved from there when I was 6. I went and saw my old house in Federal Way, the house that I grew up on and house I grew up in. And, there are only a handful of memories for me that I still have of that house or of that neighborhood, but some of them came flooding back. And to see the house where my love of the game was cultivated in general was pretty darn special. And I was pretty kind of moved to get a chance to do that, to go see the house and see what it looks like now. The same fence that I used to hit tennis balls over when I was 3 and 4 years old is still standing. To see the hill that my dad used to have to chase those tennis balls down, to get a look at that. Like it did bring back some memories. My brother happened to be in town the same week. My brother lives on the East Coast also, but he happened to be in town for an event. So he and I got together and hung out and went to dinner and went to breakfast. And we went down to the University of Washington district and walked around a little bit and went to the UW bookstore, things that we would never get to do, obviously being on the East Coast. And we went to the Space Needle on Monday before the Mariners beat the Yankees 2-1 in walk-off fashion. So it's always a work trip when I go to Seattle. It's always business. It's always writing. It's always, podcasts, content generation. And that's what I love. I truly don't want to do anything else. But to have the opportunity to do some of these other things and to meet people and hang out with people that I really like and respect, other people who are Mariners fans, other people who are listeners, other people who do what I do, it was a special opportunity. And I will never, ever take it for granted. So if I did meet you, I appreciate it. If we ever meet up in the future, I will look forward to it. And again, to my brother and Lyle and TJ and Joe, I had a blast kind of hanging out with everybody in bits and pieces. And of course, getting a chance to work with Taryn and work with all the other kind of Mariners writers and reporters who were there, who I've continued to generate relationships with. So it was a blast being in Seattle. I am back in New York now, and what a horrific travel situation it was on Tuesday. It had nothing to do with TSA and government and all that. It had everything to do with weather. I left Seattle. I left my hotel room at 4:45 in the morning, got to the light rail, got on it, got to the airport by 5:40. The plane was supposed to leave at 7:15, was in the airport, got the word of the Colt Emerson extension, wrote a story on Colt Emerson quickly, and then we leave at 7:20. I get to Chicago, supposed to leave Chicago at 2:15 Central Time. We land at about 1:30. So I'm kind of racing through the airport, Home Alone style, trying to get from gate to gate to try to get back to New York. Scarf down some McDonald's en route to the gate, only to find out that we've been pushed back 45 minutes. Now I'm like, well, I could have gotten something other than McDonald's. Then we're pushed back 45 more minutes, and then an hour. And now we're not departing till 6 o'clock. And I'm going to be sitting in the airport for 5 hours by the time this all ends. Then I find out that the flight is canceled. So they're like, okay, there's another flight to New York. Another flight to Albany, New York. You can get on it at 8:15. But hey, by the way, the weather's still bad. I don't think we're going to go there. And oh, by the way, that flight's full, so you can't do it anyways. Okay. Hey, do you want to go to Philadelphia and then go to Albany? I was like, sure. Okay, that one leaves in only a little while, so you actually get home earlier than you were supposed to. But it also, I don't think, is going to go off because of the weather. So I go, finally, what is your recommendation? They go, stay the night. So I spent the night in Chicago. Watched Max Fried mow down the Mariners. Luckily, the game was relatively quick. I fell asleep, passed out up at 5:40, I think it was, Central Time on Wednesday. Finally back to New York in time for the game, and the Mariners didn't leave much to write home about in that one, losing 5-3, although they did show some punch late against the Yankees bullpen. But just a terrible travel day, but an excellent trip nonetheless. All right. Before we get to Penn Murfee, let me just tell you that I spoke to Penn Murfee, former Mariners reliever. You will remember Penn Murfee. Penn Murfee was awesome in that 2022 season, right? In the drought-breaking season, Penn Murfee was one of the best stories for the Mariners in 2022, and he was one of their best relievers. He went 1-2, but he went 4-0 with a 2.99 ERA in 64 games. He was phenomenal. He was a lever that Scott Service pulled often, and just a great part of that very special team in Mariners history. I spoke to Penn Murfee actually last Wednesday, 1 week ago, prior to opening day. Here's how that conversation went. I started off by asking him, Penn, thank you for being with me, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for letting me come on the show.
Well, I appreciate you being with me. You had an unbelievable 2022, 64 games, 2.99 ERA, helped the team break the drought, get to the playoffs. I got to ask you, the 2022 season, your experience with Mariners fans in T-Mobile Park, how do you describe it?
It was, my first year in the big leagues, and I think I got really spoiled with the year that we had. It was just, it was like, it was pure electricity. Something I'll never forget. But in the moment, looking back on it, I was kind of just, locked into the present moment. It was so much adrenaline each and every night, and then closing in on that postseason run, it was really special.
Before we get back to that, let me just do a quick check-in with you. How are you doing right now, and what are you up to? Because after you left Seattle, or as part of leaving Seattle, you dealt with some pretty serious arm injuries. You did come back last year and pitch for the White Sox and in the minors, but how are you doing physically, and are you working towards any opportunities right now?
I've kind of got bit by the injury bug. Before last year in January, I was throwing a bullpen and actually fully tore my right ankle. And, tried to pitch through it for the season and shoot it up with cortisone. And that didn't work out so well. Had a pretty rough year. Ended up getting released. And I elected to have my ankle operated on last August. And it has been really complicated. I've actually got a really rare case, surgical complication called a pseudoaneurysm. And I have a bulged artery in the front of my ankle joint. It's been pressing on the nerves, and to keep it short, my foot is still the size of a beach ball, and I've got nerve pain and all this other junk. So I'm trying to get that corrected. I'm actually waiting to hear from a surgery scheduler today to try and go in and take out that aneurysm and get my normal life back. So no plans to work back towards playing ball. Just trying to get back to the point where I can walk and run and lead a normal life again.
Well, we are certainly rooting for that. I'm sorry to hear about all you've been through beyond the arm problems. It's kind of clunky and awkward to go back to my original line of questioning, but I'll try to do so gracefully. As a rookie in 2022, you hadn't lived kind of the stench of the drought that the longtime fans had. But as you're going through the season and the drought finally gets broken, did you realize the significance of it all?
In my limited scope, yes. I think seeing all the fans after, Cal hit that game clinching home run to send us to the postseason and everyone just going bananas. I think it resonated a lot more then. It was buzz of the town and people were excited. You can tell people were wearing their Mariners gear, and it started to resonate. But, I can't put myself in their shoes of 21 years, right? I think that I just didn't have that purview. But seeing everyone go bananas and the excitement in the city, it felt good to be a part of it.
I was at spring training a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about this with Brian O'Keefe, who ironically was called up to the Mariners the day that Cal hit the drought-breaking home run. We had this kind of same talk. I'll ask you, where were you when Cal hit the home run, and what was your reaction?
It's funny. I don't even remember. I don't even. I truly don't even remember. I blacked out.
Well,
I cannot tell you, Brady. I think I was in the bullpen maybe, but all I really remember was celebrating on the field and like running around the field after. But I do not remember where I was.
The big group wind dance was one of the coolest things that I've seen on a baseball field. I don't know whose idea that was, if it was Scott's idea or it was pre-planned or whatever, but when everybody got in the circle and did the post-game wind dance, that was one of the memories that's going to stick out to me for a really long time.
In my experience, I black out in those circumstances. So whoever had the wherewithal, I don't know if it was pre-planned or not, but from my experience, it was all just kind of a feral, all bets are off. Everyone's just kind of going nuts.
You were off also to a great start in 2023. I think 16 appearances early in the season, ERA under 2. Ultimately, that's when the injuries set in and the organization ultimately moves on. But how difficult was that time between being hurt and, missing out on the chance to kind of stick with the organization that at the time, we all kind of thought was on an upward trend?
Yeah, I think, God had other plans for me. I met my wife through the time in Seattle that I had. We got introduced by Matt Festa's now wife. So it was a bummer, but I think everything happens for a reason. And I would have loved to have kept pitching that year, obviously, but I think that in the end, nothing happened by accident. So that's all I can really say. It was a bummer, but like I said, I don't have any regrets, and I think that I ended up exactly where I needed to be.
Let's talk about you. 33rd round pick in 2018. The 33rd round doesn't even exist anymore. The probabilities say that you were never supposed to have gotten to the big leagues, but yet you did. You carved out a good career for a couple of years. What went into the journey, the belief, the perseverance? Because again, the odds say you weren't supposed to have done it.
Yeah, I shouldn't be as proud about it as I probably am.
I would be
rearing its ugly head, but no, I'm just really grateful. I mean, Scott Hunter, the scouting director at the time, and the organization, call a spade a spade. I was filler in the minor leagues, right? I think that people in baseball understand that. Like, you sign for $5,000 in the 33rd round, you're not pegged as a prospect by any stretch of the imagination. So I am proud of sticking it out and making it. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that the organization gave me. I feel like that I was a good fit at the right time, right place at the right time with the Mariners. And I really credit that organization as a whole as to why I even had the chance to be in the bucket to get drawn from to play in the major leagues. So I'm very grateful to the Mariners as a whole. As far as sticking it out, I kind of had just a sense of delusion, I guess. At that time in my life, I was just riding the high of being low 20s and, sleeping on a bus, going and being with the boys. And I was just enjoying my time. And in an immature way, I wasn't thinking too far in the future. So, making zero money in the minor leagues and everything, I was just enjoying the ride. And I think that was a credit to why I made it, is because I wasn't, I wasn't looking too far in the future. I guess I gave myself the runway to just enjoy the experience and be present. And I think that freed me up a lot. I was just having fun.
The Mariners are notorious, I guess, for taking kind of under the radar guys and turning them into big contributors. We saw this in 21 with Drew Steckenrider. We've seen it since with Justin Topa and Edward Bizardo. We saw it with Casey Sadler, Paul Sewald on that 2022 team. Did they do anything special with you per se, whether it was mechanical, mindset, pitch usage, or, I don't want to give them too much credit, but I don't want to give them none. Kind of what went into what they did for you?
Like I said, they gave me the opportunity. I mean, I was a floater, right? I was coming from extended spring training after my terrible stint in short season my first year. And I was filling in for AAA and high A. And, I was the older guy that they would ship back and forth from Arizona to fill in when the bullpen got blown out the night before. And I had a couple people go to bat for me. One of them was the old manager in AAA. Goodness gracious, I'm forgetting his name. I'll think of it here in a minute. But he reached out to the front office and Andy McKay and said, "Hey, this kid's got something. He's walking a lot of guys, but he can also punch people out with a slider. And I think that you need to give him a consistent home in the lower levels, and let him figure some things out." So that was a big, advocate. And when I went to cover for high A in Modesto, they eventually let me stay there for the rest of the season in 2019. And the pitching coach there at the time, Rob Marcello, he kind of followed me up through the minor leagues, I guess. And when I was in AAA, there was one specific outing, and it was when they were cracking down on sticky stuff. And admittedly, in the minor leagues, I'd used a little bit of Pelican grip. And when they really started cracking down, they were handing out suspensions left and right. Like they were making it very known that they weren't tolerant of it. And I quit using it cold turkey overnight. Well, when I quit using the Pelican grip, my very next outing, I was choking the baseball real hard because I was scared to lose grip of it. And I guess it tweaked something with my fastball. And that's when I kind of started throwing a unique fastball shape. And Rob, being the diligent coach that he was up until probably 4 a.m, look at everyone's numbers. And he came back the next day and said, Penn, whatever you did last night, don't change. Like you went from having a negative good fastball to like, okay, your pitch shape is actually showing up as being, competitive in the big league. So I don't know what you did, what you changed, but like, just keep doing that. So those two people, I think his name was Dan Brown. The old manager in AAA, kind of sticking his neck out for me. And then Rob recognizing something that switched, were two defining moments in my career. And again, just the Mariners front office and player development staff as a whole saying, we don't care if he's a 33rd rounder. We're not going to just keep him down and stifle his development and growth and progression through the minor leagues. Like they rewarded my production, which I'm thankful for, because you hear it and you saw it a lot more in the old days when, major league players were 15-year tenures, and it was very difficult to break into the majors. I feel like I was rewarded for my production, and I had a couple people go to bat for me. So,
pardon my ignorance that I don't know this off the top of my head, but at what point did you develop the kind of sidearm delivery?
That was my senior year in college. So I was at Vanderbilt University. I had season-ending groin surgery playing first base as a junior. And when I came back as a senior, I was trying to run the bases and play infield, and my groin just wasn't cooperating. I knew I wasn't going to play. It was just painful. And I asked the coaching staff if I could pitch. I always had a decent arm. At the time, I was, throwing a little harder than I did towards the latter end of my career. But I just wanted to ride out my senior year and still, be a part of the team. And I figured I'd have a good chance at pitching as I did anywhere else. And they let me pitch. But my throwing partner, his name's Matt Rupenthal. He played with the Astros in the minor leagues for a while. And he came to me that fall my senior year, and was like, Penn, you kind of stink, dude. You're walking people. you don't throw very hard, and you're erratic, but why don't you throw like you did in the infield? Like when you'd turn double plays from third base and you had a lower arm slot, why not just be athletic and throw that way? And that day in the outfield on the left field line, that's when I started dropping down. And I just threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and saw what stuck. But I credit Matt Rupenthal. He was the one who encouraged me to find what worked instead of beating my head against the wall.
You're in a pretty unique perspective. You grew up in the organization. You saw guys come in like Logan Gilbert and George Kirby and Julio and Cal. I'm sure you played with a lot of these guys up through before you even got to Seattle with them. What is it like, or what has it been like to see them kind of grow into the players that they are now?
Oh, man, I'd like to say that we all knew it. And, at a certain point, I think we all did. I mean, those guys are so talented and such special ball players that you've rooted for them the whole time to just develop into what you thought they could be. So that's been really fruitful to watch them, grow into leaders of that team and become players of that elite caliber. So I'm so happy for them. And it's been really fun to watch.
I'll get you out of here on two quick ones. Because you got to the big leagues after and had a really good run, it's hard to say for me that it had a huge impact on you, but I am curious, what was the impact of the COVID season? Just missing all of 2020, kind of halting the momentum maybe that you were building at the time. Again, it all worked out in the end, but what was it like missing 2020?
A learning experience. I think I grew a lot as a human being during that time. And like I mentioned earlier, nothing happens by accident, in my opinion. I did a lot of growing up during that year. Did it have an impact on my baseball career? Maybe, probably. But I think that it was a learning experience for me and for a lot of people. But looking back on it, I mean, I made the most of it, and I have a lot of fond memories from that time. I know it was a very drastic change in our daily lives, and there's a lot of difficulties around that time. But I do have fond memories of just making it work, driving Uber Eats and doing some freelance landscaping and stuff in Arizona in 120 degrees. And just, that's kind of when I mentioned, like, I'm proud of making it. I look back on those times when I was just staying afloat and gritting my teeth and getting through it. And like I said, I did a lot of growing up, but I won't comment too much about how much of an impact on it, it had on my career. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was it was definitely a unforeseen circumstance.
You mentioned Matt Festa's wife introducing you to your wife. I'm always amazed at the relationships that last beyond someone's time in an organization. Who do you still talk to?
Baseball it's a fast-paced train, and once you're off the train, you're kind of off the train. So when you're not in that world and you're not, and you see it even when you change organizations, right? Like, the guys that you really got close to, and then you're playing against them, like you're with your team. So you can call people up, a year and a half and never talk to them in that time, and it feels like yesterday since you spoke. But to answer your question more directly, I still keep up with Cal. I'll keep up with Logan from time to time. Festa, obviously. Paul Sewald, I saw him at Festa's wedding. And I'm leaving off a ton of names, but it's just like all the other players I played with in the minor leagues too, and guys that I never even played with that I just met through baseball. You keep up from time to time, but I definitely made lasting friendships with my time in Seattle. I think that we had a really special group of people. Adam Frazier is another guy who lives in Nashville in the off season. He's someone that I've remained contact with. And, there's a lot of guys. Too many to name, and too few that I mentioned for sure.
Well, again, this is coming out after opening day with the Mariners open up with Cleveland. I'm going to be there. Festa's playing for Cleveland, so we'll get a chance to see him. I'm glad you're tight because the Festa Ireland wedding looked like the party of the offseason.
I don't know how y'all got footage of that, but it was a blast. Seeing Kirby and Brash and O'Keefe, Sewald. There's a lot of guys who showed up, and credit to the Festas. They put on a great weekend.
Penn Murfee, former Mariners reliever, 2022, 2023, one of the highlights of a great 2022 season for the M's. Penn, appreciate the time today. Get the ankle healthy. We hope the best for you. We appreciate what you did for the Mariners, and we appreciate you taking some time today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brady. Have a good one.
There he goes. That was Penn Murfee, former Mariners reliever in 2022. First off, the ankle injury sounds devastating. You hate to think of a guy who, I believe Penn Murfee is 31. You hate to think of a guy who, the way he talks, it sounds like his career is over. That's why, now again, he didn't say that explicitly, but reading between the lines, that's kind of what he said, that he's basically kind of moved on because his ankle is just too degenerative. And that's too bad. I thought Penn Murfee was a great guest. It was hard for me to sit on that interview for a week and know it was in the can and not play it, but I wanted to play it here after opening day, and I wanted to see how kind of the trip would lay out and everything. So Penn Murfee was phenomenal. Remember, you can get in if you want to, if you're watching on YouTube or watching live on X. Appreciate everybody who is hanging out, watching live. Now that we are into the season, I am going to try to do more of these live podcasts. I have always typically been a guy who likes to just put out the audio only, but I know how many of you also prefer to watch your podcasts on video or prefer to at least have the option to watch it on YouTube. So it is something that I'm going to try to do more of. I can't promise it will be every single episode, especially if I'm recording, at 2:00 in the morning Eastern time. But it is something I'm going to try to do more of here now into the season in 2026. All right. I mentioned Matt Festa. I did get a chance to catch up with Matt Festa over the course of the weekend in Seattle. That's going to come at the end of the show, but we got to go here. Colt Emerson, Mariners top prospect. I don't know how I went 45 minutes without doing this, but Colt Emerson, Mariners top prospect, an 8-year, $95 million contract extension, and there's an option for a 9th year. There's a lot of different ways to take this, but let me just say this is a smart move for the Mariners. It's not a move that comes without risk, right? We saw what happened to Evan White When you sign a player to a pre-arbitration deal, when you sign a player to a deal before you have to, there's absolutely a risk that it can backfire. That said, if you are positive that the guy is going to be a star, that this is a smart thing to do for a handful of reasons, right? The Mariners giving out $95 million is a lot of money. The Mariners would not do this deal if they didn't think there was a chance to save money somewhere, right? I mean, they are taking a risk, but they wouldn't do this deal if they didn't think there was a chance to save money at some point down the line. So financially, if Cole Emerson ends up as good as we all think he can be, financially, this is going to end up being a home run for the Mariners. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't. So financially, it's smart. It shows good faith between the organization and the player. Cole Emerson will remember that the organization believed in him and took care of him. The organization now has Cole Emerson for at least the option of at least 2 more years, right? At minimum or at maximum, they were going to have him for 7 years, right? Depending on when they brought him up this year. Now they have him for 9. They have him for up to at least 2 more years than they were expecting. So financially, it's good. From a player standpoint, relationship standpoint, it can only be good. And from a roster standpoint, it can be good as well. The Mariners will now have Julio Rodriguez through his prime, Cole Emerson through his prime, Josh Naylor for much of his prime, and Cal Raleigh for his prime, not to mention the guys they have in the starting rotation. So this is a smart move by the Mariners. It's a financially savvy move if Cole Emerson ends up as good as we think he can be. The money, I don't want to get into too much of kind of listing off things because I think it's difficult to conceptualize for both me and for the listener. But let's just say this. On a standard deal, Cole Emerson would make the league minimum for the first 3 years. He would go to arbitration for the next 3. And then he would hit free agency, right? That would be standard. So league minimum is $800,000, a little bit less than that. The Mariners are going to pay Cole Emerson $1 million in year 1, $2 million in year 2, and $9 million in year 3. So they are certainly giving him a raise above the league minimum. Now, in 2026, it's only $1 million. It's not that much. 2027, it's $2 million. Not that much. The big jump is in year 3. That's 2028. Well, guess what? By 2028, conceivably, Luis Castillo's big deal is off the books. Randy Arozarena's big deal is off the books. And Logan Gilbert is a free agent after 2027 as well. So we don't know what's going to happen with him, but conceivably, his deal is off the books as well, at least potentially. So by the time the Mariners have to start paying Cole Emerson real money, the savings from other parts of the roster is evident. Then Cole Emerson will make $15 million a year for the next 5 years. I can't go too far out on the deals. Cal, Naylor, and Julio will all make good money. Gilbert might be gone. Castillo and Arozarena will be gone. Kirby's deal runs out after 2028. He might be gone. Wu and Miller will be in their last year of, arbitration in 2029. So the Mariners have clearly structured this deal with Cole Emerson in an advantageous way for them. They will pay him a little more than they need to in year 3. They have savings in year 3. They will then have $15 million a year for the remainder of that deal. And if Cole Emerson was great in arbitration, he could make $20 million a year. He could make $25 million a year in the last years of arbitration. So this is a smart move to invest in your future, to invest in a player, to continue to cultivate a relationship with that player. And if that player is as good as they think he's going to be, there will end up being some savings financially as well. The nerd in me wants to know if the Mariners did this because they are nervous or because they are kind of aware of where the collective bargaining agreement is going. Again, it's nerdy and it's in the weeds, but the Mariners did not need to do this deal, and they didn't need to give Cole Emerson as much as they gave him. There's a reason why it beat the previous pre-arb deal by $13 million. Do they think something is going to change in the collective bargaining agreement that makes this even more advantageous now? Do they think that players will get to arbitration a year earlier? So now arbitration, a bigger deal, starts in year 3 rather than year 4. If so, then the Mariners might have saved even more money here. Do the Mariners think that a year of arbitration will be lopped off and a player will get to free agency earlier, and therefore the Mariners just bought out, another year of free agency and therefore will save money? I think all of those things are on the table. None of us know how the CBA is going to go and what it's going to do to the current system. The Mariners have decided we're just going to get the jump on that. We're just going to kind of beat this thing to the punch and have kind of our cost certainty right now as we move into the future where things are very, very uncertain. I remember back at the end of February talking to Buster Olney, our ESPN MLB insider, and Buster's going to join us tomorrow. And I asked him about contracts I asked him about Kate Anderson and Ryan Sloan, and I asked him about Logan Gilbert and George Kirby. This is what Buster said to me, and I think this applies to Colt Emerson as well.
Yeah, and look, I do think that when we look at how the Mariners are going to handle this pitching, I think you just look at the Atlanta Braves as being a model, right? They're not a super team financially in terms of where their payroll is. They're not where the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees are. And what Alex Anthopoulos, their general manager, has done is basically said, you know what, I'm not going to pay sticker price. I'm not going to pay top free agent dollars. So Freddie Freeman, they moved on from him and they traded for Matt Olson and got him at a team-friendly deal. They let Dansby Swanson go because they didn't want to pay market value. They let Max Fried go. And, they tended to just focus on being able to sign guys at a contract that would be favorable at some point to the team. That's what's happened with Cal Raleigh. That's what happened with Julio Rodriguez. So I think, Mike and I haven't asked about this and where they stand, but generally speaking, I don't see the Mariners as a franchise who are going to pay sticker price for a guy who's either on the verge of free agency or in free agency.
So that's what Buster said back in February about the Mariners pitching. So Colt Emerson, clearly a guy that they feel they could lock up now. Clearly a guy that they, the longer you go into the situation, the harder it becomes to sign a guy. Look, we've seen that with Logan Gilbert. The Mariners have made multiple runs at Logan Gilbert and haven't been able to get anything done. They haven't not signed Logan Gilbert because they don't want him. It's just become harder to sign Logan Gilbert. You take who you can get when you can get them. So they got Julio, they got Cal, they've got J.P. Crawford back in the day. That's another one, by the way, whose deal is going to run off the books after this year. You take who you can get when you can get them. I would still love to see the Mariners make a run at Brian Wu while he's still young and relatively affordable and relatively far away from free agency, because the closer you get to free agency, the more likely you are to lose him also. I don't know if the Mariners are going to be able to retain Logan Gilbert. They might have missed their window, although they have tried. So I don't look at this like, oh man, they gave Emerson the money, they won't give it to Gilbert. They've tried to do this with Gilbert, and I don't blame him for not wanting to do it. But they've done this. I think it's smart, and you just lock up who you can when you can. I would love to see the Mariners go after Gilbert still. I would love to see them go after Wu, but if I don't know if it's likely. This one, they could get done. So credit to them, credit to Colt Emerson. Both sides are taking a little bit of risk here. Absolutely. Colt Emerson could take $95 million. It goes up to 130. If he plays great, he could have made $40 million, $50 million a year in free agency that he's passing up. That's very true. And the Mariners could risk him being a bust. That's very true as well. But I'm pumped today to see the Mariners investing in their future. And as for when Colt Emerson's going to get here, I think he's going to be here by May 1st. The question becomes, okay, when, but also how does he get used? That is the question moving forward for the Mariners with Colt Emerson. I don't think that this deal necessarily puts the pressure on the Mariners to call him up. I still want to see them call him up at a time where they feel he is ready. I would hope that is a full month into the minor league season, basically. But then the Mariners will have a fun game of trying to figure out how everybody fits together. Because Brendan Donovan, through the first 7 games, has scuffled a bit at third base. I don't think he's been awful, but he's scuffled. He had a throwing error on Saturday in a loss. He had an error on Wednesday in a loss. Like, he is imperfect at third base. So if Cole Emerson comes up here and plays third and J.P. Crawford plays short, does Brendan Donovan play second and Cole Young DH? Does Cole Young play second and Brendan Donovan DH? What does that mean for Raley? What does that mean for Canzone? My first gut tells me that Brendan Donovan and Cole Young rotate between DH and second base. Luke Raley plays the outfield, and Dom Canzone is relegated to pinch hitting duties. That would be my very first thought here if Cole Emerson comes up, or when Cole Emerson comes up, and everybody's healthy. If everybody's healthy, I see Emerson at third, Crawford at short, Donovan and Young splitting at second and DH, and then Canzone being on the bench more often than not, pinch hitting. We will see. We're going to talk to Buster tomorrow, by the way. The Buster interview will come out probably by 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, so a lot of you will wake up to it. So Buster Only will join us tomorrow. We'll talk a lot about this whole thing early with him. All right. I want to get us out of here on this. I mentioned we talked about in the Penn Murfee interview, we talked about Matt Festa's wedding. Remember Matt Festa, also a member of that 2022 Mariners team, a big part of that 2022 Mariners team. Actually has spent part of 4 years with the Mariners, 2018 and 19, and then 22 and part of 23 before moving on to a couple of other organizations. He is now with Cleveland. I caught up with Matt Festa in the clubhouse at T-Mobile Park over the weekend. I started off by asking him, how are you? So before we talk about baseball, saw the off-season videos. I had Penn Murfee on my podcast the other day. We were talking about your wedding.
Oh.
So why Ireland?
Oh, okay. Yeah. My wife's family is from Ireland. Her grandfather was born and raised out there. And her extended family still owns farms out in Northern Ireland. So when she was a little girl, she would go out and visit all the time. And that was a non-negotiable for her. She always wanted to get married in Ireland. She wanted to actually get married on the family farm, but that's a little too much.
Yeah.
So the closest thing we could do is do Dublin. It was easier for people to get there. We got married in a castle. It was pretty magical. Everybody had a great time. So it was awesome.
So Seawald was there, Cal was there, Penn was there. How many other Mariners guys were at the wedding?
Paul, Brash, George, Kirby, Cal. Logan was supposed to be there, but Henry was getting born, so he couldn't make the trip. I think that was it. And obviously Penn. Most of the guys from the 22 team.
How cool is it to still have those relationships strong a couple of years later, that they're such a big part of your life that you want them there, and they're willing to make the trip out there to come?
Oh, I mean, it means the world to me that they sacrifice their time and their money to come celebrate that moment. And, we've shared so many memories together, like whether we were coming up in the system together, me and Penn, or we were breaking a playoff drought in 22. Like, that really brought us all together, and that was one of the most fun teams I ever played for.
You were such a big part of that 22 team. Did you realize as the season was going kind of how significant the opportunity was, and then when the drought got broken, kind of how much it meant to people?
Absolutely. I would say right around the deadline when we made those moves and really took a shot at going for it, we felt like we were going to do it. And I didn't really feel how much the city appreciated it until it was all over, and you kind of got to decompress a little bit. And I spent a couple of days out in Seattle, and people would just thank me on the streets. It was really cool.
Penn said he blacked out during Cal's homer. Didn't even remember where he was. Do you remember where you were?
I remember where I was. We were in the bullpen. We were doing like the kick circle, like on our own. We did our own little kick circle, and then we ran out there and then did the big kick circle with the team. But I remember just like my chin was resting on the wall, and I just watched it go up in the right field, and we just flipped out.
What was it like to kind of grow up in the system and see the guys like Cal and George and Wu and Logan kind of grow into the players they are now?
It just doesn't surprise me at all. Those guys were super talented, and being a part of that system, like, they're just helping those players develop and get better. So it doesn't shock me at all that every year another one grabs a different all-star selection. So
it's obviously a little different now being on a different team, but what did it kind of feel like? What are the emotions of being back here anytime you come back to town?
Well, you just love the stadium. The fan base is great. The weather out here is perfect, and I just love pitching at this yard. So that was Matt Festa earlier this weekend
I believe that one was on Saturday at T-Mobile Park. So I appreciated the chance to talk with him. Matt Festa did throw. Yes, it was Saturday because Matt Festa threw an inning and 2/3 of scoreless relief for the Guardians in that game that Cleveland won. So not happy to see the Mariners lose, but I am happy to see Matt Festa have success at T-Mobile, a place that he loves pitching at. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the Refuse to Lose podcast. We are going to have Buster Olney of ESPN back on tomorrow's show. I've got a couple of other big interviews lined up next week. I got a couple of things I taped here in Seattle again over the last couple of days that I'm going to play for you that I'm looking forward to everybody hearing. Again, I appreciate everybody I got a chance to meet in Seattle over the last couple of days. I am back in New York now. I will see the Mariners on the road multiple times this season. I'm looking forward to that. Mariners are off on Thursday. They're back at it on Friday against the Angels for the Angels home opener, I believe. And reminder, Buster Olney of ESPN with us on Thursday. We will talk soon. We will talk in less than 24 hours for Buster. And as always, go M's.